Hi, Phil Aston here from Now Spinning Magazine with another, it's not an album review as such, and it could be classed as a musical memory, or it could be filed under the things that I'm playing at the moment, because I do now a weekly show where I just talk about the albums that I've picked to play for that week. But I have been dipping into this album a lot, and I thought I don't want to technically review it as such, but just talk about, I suppose, how I discovered it, what my feelings are now, and just waffle on a bit about Led Zeppelin. And this is The Song Remains the Same, 1976. My first exposure to this was the old grey whistle test, and we used to, if we were lucky enough, to be allowed to stay up late enough to watch it on the TV, because it was always on quite late at night, and it was school the next day. So sometimes trying to get your parents to allow you to watch it if you hadn't done your homework was quite difficult. And I used to hate going into school the next day and people saying, "Did you see blah blah on the old grey whistle test yesterday?" And I'd say, "No, I didn't," because it was never repeated. Maybe once a year at Christmas they'd show the highlights. But anyway, at this particular time they showed clips from the film The Song Remains the Same, and the main clip was of a bit of Jimmy Page doing the bit with his violin bow, climbing up the mountain as the hermit. And I knew nothing about that. I'd never seen Led Zeppelin live. So to see that was amazing. And it was so ethereal, so full of myth and legend. Again, being a teenager in the 70s, I was heavily influenced by King Arthur, all that kind of stuff. So this was, Led Zeppelin. There was a lot of mythology, hobbits, Lord of the Rings. So it was fantastic. And so I can't remember if the film came out first or the album came out, but I remember buying the album. I think it probably was that I bought the album first. And it was a luxurious affair, really, with the embossed cover and, of course, the booklet inside it. I think with vinyl we get kind of blasé about booklets and stuff now. But it had a booklet, and Cameron Crowe wrote the introduction, which made the band sound like being someone of the planet. The photographs were tiny, so it still kept the mystery behind everything intact. And each page was dedicated to one of the members. And John Bonham was on his farm, lots of stuff where they could see they're playing with their rock star toys like dragsters and motorbikes. Plant was obviously next to a castle with a horse dressed as a Viking. And of course, Page was this mysterious figure. And of course, we had the tracks on the back. And Rock and Roll, Celebration Day, Song Remains the Same, Rain Song, etc. And I'm just kind of landing on the bits that meant the most to me. And they still do. Dazed and Confused, which was way too long for one side of vinyl, really. But there were elements of that I found mesmerising. And I kind of did compartmentalise it in my brain, was how the different parts worked together, but I loved it. But I guess if I had to say which side did I play the most, it was side 3. And it was No Quarter and Stairway to Heaven. To me, it still is the definitive version of Stairway to Heaven. The way it starts, does anyone remember laughter and everything? I just think it's immaculate. Side 4 had Moby Dick on, which I wasn't a great fan of because I'm not of drum solos, unless it's The Mule with Ian Pace or even Lee Kerslake with the bit from The Gypsy. But for this, it was just a bit too long for me. Okay, I'm just saying. And a whole lot of love I loved. I loved the way the riffs went in and out and the extended sections. I just love it, and I still do. I used to play that a lot, absolutely tons, but it was No Quarter. No Quarter was the track that really did it for me. I think that is one of Jimmy Page's finest guitar solos. It's just beautiful. The whole arrangement, the whole performance of it is just marvellous. So when I saw the film, of course, and the film had tracks on it that weren't on the album. In those days, you kind of expected things to be left off, as disappointing as it was. Although in this case, I always felt they missed off some things that were better than some of the things that were on it. I mean, Since I've Been Loving You, for example, it's, again, the definitive live version, and it wasn't on the album, which was, disappointing. And other stuff as well. Where was it? The Ocean, Black Dog. I mean, I suppose some of these weren't full versions on the film, I guess, but they were magical. And so I loved the film. The film used to be wheeled out a lot. Me and my friends used to go to Newquay in Cornwall on holiday, and after we'd been to the pub called the Victoria Bars, which had like the best rock jukebox on the planet at the time, it was so good that people played the A side and the B side, and by the end of the night, it hadn't even got all the way to the end. So if you put on anything towards the end of the jukebox, you never got to hear it, depending on what time you got there. Anyway, but the local cinema used to put Song Remains the Same on as a kind of film that would come on about 11:30 at night after the pub had shut. And so loads of drunk rock fans would go, because rock fans were everywhere back then. So being in Newquay in Cornwall, it was full of rock fans. This cinema would be full of rock fans, all drunk, all not really having the energy to go to the loo when they should have done when they were halfway through Jimmy Page's guitar solo in Dazed and Confused. And obviously a lot of people was aware, but I remember it, and it was played on it played in theatres over the years, for years, literally did. And so I bought the original CD. This is I put my glasses on for this section. Who mastered this? I think this is important, isn't it? If I remember rightly, I've got the right one. Because what I mentioned next is something that I was not really aware of as such. Let's say, who does it say who mastered it? Yes, this was CD mastered by Barry Diamond for Atlantic Studios. And this, I wouldn't have thought of saying it was the definitive version, but it's become so because of something I didn't realise that Jimmy Page sometimes did. And Jimmy Page tinkered with things. And so when I heard on Planet Rock, when was this? 2007, when this version came out, which came with the fold-out sleeve and the booklet inside it, etc. And all the extra tracks are on here as well. I'd heard the extra tracks on Planet Rock, and I couldn't wait to hear No Quarter. And it had been altered. It wasn't the same as I remembered it from the film. And I have to say I was quite disappointed with that. I did feel that overall the sound quality was richer, deeper, and better. And I know not everyone agrees with that either, but I'm just going on what I think. And then when I upgraded, which is how I saw it, to all the new Led Zeppelin remasters, which was in 2018, I went and bought it again. And there isn't really any difference. There's a couple of pictures that are different, etc. But again, it's the editing. Some things have been altered again, and I'm not quite sure why Jimmy Page felt he had to do that. And I don't know whether it's the rules about something that belonged to the film company, or they couldn't just transfer it into the soundtrack as it was. I don't know. But anyway, so I have been playing this album a great deal, and Chris Wright, who's in the Now Spinning Facebook group, and also writes for the website. He's a very knowledgeable chap on Led Zeppelin and hi-fi as well, as some of you may have seen the podcast I did with him. But he always talks about the original 2 CD version as being the best CD version that you can buy. I prefer the sound of the later ones, but I prefer the versions of the first one. The vinyl one, I've actually got this twice on record for some reason. But I always felt I think the vinyl was struggling to contain, not so much the power of Led Zeppelin, but the length of the tracks. So this one, the first CD version, the 2 CD version, I played it on Tuesday of this week, and I had to crank it up a bit. But I have to say, I really, really enjoyed it. And I just loved the feeling of No Quarter again. No Quarter on House of the Holy is good. And House of the Holy is good. But this version, these live versions, and I know there are other variants of Led Zeppelin live, How the West Was Won, etc. But I think this one will always have a connection to me because of seeing them on the cinema at an early age, the way they looked and sounded, and the set list at the time. But that section, if I pick the 4 songs that mean the most to me from the original, it would be No Quarter, Stairway to Heaven, Whole Lot of Love. I've faded a bit from Dazed and Confused because of the kind of indulgence of it. But those 3, No Quarter, Stairway to Heaven, Whole Lot of Love, I absolutely adore. And the extra tracks that I always felt should be on it is obviously Since I've Been Loving You is the main one. You've got Heartbreaker as well, etc. And as I said, The Ocean. I think I've always loved The Ocean. I think The Ocean is one of their best metal tracks, really. I'm going to use the word heavy metal Led Zeppelin. I know they don't like it. But on that one, I think it's great. Perhaps the kind of very twee rock and roll ending perhaps loses a notch, a point there. But otherwise, I think it's just the perfect marriage of Jimmy Page and John Bonham and John Paul Jones and Robert Plant, really. But no Quarter. so if I keep trimming it down, yeah, No Quarter from the live version is one of the best Led Zeppelin moments. For anyone who's really into Led Zeppelin, or you watching this video and you discover it and thinking, I feel shy or embarrassed to say that I need to start with Led Zeppelin, I don't know where to go first. No Quarter Live will give you a good insight to lots of aspects of this legendary band. So thank you for watching, thank you for being here. Let me know what you think in the comments. How many versions have you got of Song That Remains the Same? Do you like it? Do you still play it? When was the last time you played it? Let me know. Remember, music is the healer and the doctor. Take care, everybody. Please subscribe, support me if you can, and I shall see you very, very soon.